right, guys, a watch list for November 18th, which would be Wednesday. I had a crappy day today. It's my first red day since September. And I'll talk about, what generally when I have a bad day, there's one common thread, and I'm going to share that with you in a minute. But first, after the day ended, I just was so glad to be not in front of the screens for a little bit. I went up into my closet looking for an old trading book so I could get some advice again. A lot of trading books have the mental advice that we need when we screw up. So I looked, and then I ended up finding in an old chest of mine a can of, remember Falstaff? I used to have a beer can collection, and I still have a Falstaff from probably 1972, and it's not open. And I know it's worth more if it's not open, but after today, I don't care. Get the dust off the top. Oh, God, that's disgusting. It's warm, too. So I'm going to go into the list, and I'll talk a little bit about what I did wrong today. But let's start with YELP. This gap down here and then ran up to 2770. And you see here this little pop over resistance about 4 days ago, and it's really kind of coiling. So I like it up over this little tiny ascending triangle. Yelp might get popping. So somewhere around the low 2760s might just break it. Remember, once it gets to 2771, it's up into this gap. So my first catalyst to be 2762, and then I'll also write down 2771 as a secondary catalyst. So that one's worth watching tomorrow. HART. This is really strong. I mean, had this big 20 million shares about four days ago and is holding up really well. So get that old line off there. I definitely want to watch this maybe over today's high. Let's write in my notes 156. If it gets over today's high, there's really nothing in the way between that and 170, which is this high, and then maybe a breakout. So let's keep our eyes on HART, EROS. Now, there's nothing very pretty about this chart. I actually called a trade in this first thing this morning as a gap play. We already had it on bounce watch, and then it was gapping up. Let's see if I can get my charts to work. So I just called, these are 2-minute candles. I just called it if it got to 9 here. Okay, you have a high, you have a lower high on 2s. Called it if it got to 9 as a long. Worst case stop, probably 20 cents. And it went pretty quickly to 960. I started my day off well, and then went downhill from there. But because I don't know, you almost have a gap fill here, but because it had that nice move at the open, I don't really like the daily anymore because, now you've got kind of a topping tail close near its lows on big volume. But it's so beaten up that I still want to have it on watch. It's not exactly my favorite setup. And let's get into it. I found a bunch of bounce plays. TERP, I was looking for a bounce when it looked like this. It had a green day, and then now a big old swoosh on the biggest volume yet that I can see going back on the chart. So, excuse me. So I still think this is oversold. I mean, just a couple sessions ago, this was almost $14, and if you go back about 3 more days, this was almost $20. Okay, and today it peaked down under 10, went all the way to 957. So I want to watch this one as a potential bounce play for tomorrow. Remember, I'm a day trader, so I'm just looking for stuff to trade tomorrow on an intraday basis. I'm in cash every night, so even though I had a cruddy day today, I'm not. My neck isn't out there. If something happens overnight, I'm back in cash. So let's see where we are. TERP. Let's go to race. Ferrari. Most of us love Ferraris, and most of us traders dream of having a Ferrari. Every once in a while, I'll post pics of a Ferrari on my website to try to entice people to join, but it's not mine. It's just some guy that parks up at the golf course. He had it chromed out. He literally chromed his Ferrari. So anyway, I post pictures of that pretending it's mine. But anyway, I think this is kind of interesting because, you had the IPO back here, sold off, pretty decent bounce up to 55, a little pullback, and it went right back. And then now just decimated 3 or 4 days in a row. Well, decimated is not the right term, but we're at new all-time lows. Again, a lot of recent IPOs, when you get 3 or 4 days down in a row to get to all-time lows, a lot of times you get a surprise bounce. So I'm not in love with that one, and it's kind of a tricky trader, but I still want to watch it. HAIN kind of did that flush. I had a line there because, and the line's not perfect, but it held 40 back here. We talked about this a couple days ago. Here, and almost a 40 here. And look at the shape to get down there this time. So I think HAIN might be ready for a bounce tomorrow. So that one goes on watch. remember, I don't just blindly take any of these. All right, there are certain things I look for before I'll call them in the chat room, and GMCR also, by the way, on Bounce Watch. An example would have been Urban Outfitters. I told you last night it was going to gap down because earnings in after hours, and then if it went red to green, which is actually right about here, it was coming back up red to green, or just a high of day break, could have had a nice trade. Now I skillfully missed this one. But that's an example of something that how I would call it on an intraday play. Dick's Sporting Goods, same deal, only I did call this one. You had this massive gap down. Remember in the video last night I said I wasn't sure when their earnings were. Obviously their earnings were before the open today. And so when DKS, let me switch to 2-minute candles. I'll show you how I called this one. I'm just showing you as examples of how I'll play something that's on Bounce Watch. DKS looked like this. So gap down, sold off, then pushes up to almost 35. Okay, it went to 34.96. It didn't do anything with it. Then it came back up, and now you've got kind of a cup and handle, and it's straight sideways. I like the fact that it did this little flush here down to 34.50 and then right back up. I literally called this at 35 even. So if it touches 35, it's up into the gap. And my stop 34.80. Look what happens. Meanders for a little bit and then really starts to gain some momentum. And this doesn't look like much of a move, but it was. From 35, it went over 37. And the daily actually looks like, hey, maybe today was, I don't want to say an all-time low, but maybe today was a low for the next long period of time. So if a swing trader would have loved that entry at 35, if it closed strong like that, you could hold multi-day probably. But anyway, so that's DKS as an example, I guess, of a bounce play. And that is actually my favorite thing. If I have something on Bounce Watch, I love for it to gap down and then give me a red to green. Men's Warehouse just goes back on watch again. You see I have a line there. There must be a reason. Let me scroll back and see if I can figure out why. Back here. Now I'm going all the way back to, I'm going back to 2010. But you can see it did hold this area for, I don't know, whatever that was, 2 or 3 months, maybe 2 months. And it's really gotten there pretty quickly. So you can't really go by a support line from, several years ago. But this one hasn't broken a previous day's high. I don't think. Maybe it did right here this morning. But then closing in its lows again. It's interesting to me now. Just one of these days, I think we could get a nice bounce in it. You've seen a lot of my videos, or if you've seen a lot of my videos, a lot of times when I'm stalking something like this, a lot of traders look at that and say, what an idiot, he's looking for a long. But remember, I'm a day trader, I'm looking for a bounce. So if I can find a few stocks that are really oversold, they go on my bounce list, and a lot of times in the chat room, we'll catch a really nice trade in it. So it doesn't cost me anything to have these on charts, okay? STRP. Another down day. A lot of times on these bounce plays, I'm looking for an afternoon high of day break. So remember that too. If you're not a member and you're just wondering how I trade these, a lot of times I'm looking for an afternoon high of day break. So like maybe a narrow range for 3 or 4 hours, and then a push through the open or through the high of the day. A lot of times you can get a really nice little mini short squeeze, I call them. So STRP, nothing pretty about the chart here, except that it was $50, less than a month ago, and now it's at $8.55. Good candidate, and when it does move, it moves pretty well. So I didn't have a trade in it today. I had it on Bounce Watch today and didn't have a trade in it, but it goes right back on watch tomorrow. FIVE, you see a theme here? Another one, just straight down, looking for a bounce, okay? And then lastly, LPCN. This one had a really nice move here. It's a very thin stock. I mean, this massive volume here, relatively speaking, was 2 million shares. So that'll show you how thin this thing is. But you had a really nice 2-day run after the gap, and then today, pretty good sell-off. I'm already going to start looking for a bounce tomorrow, okay? Especially if we get a gap down, I think this one might bounce tomorrow. So I'm not in love with this list, but as long as we stock some gap plays in the morning, like EROS this morning, we should do fine tomorrow with this list and some extra gap plays and so on. I did say I was going to talk about the one common denominator on my bad days, and I'll show it to you here. UVE. UVE got me, okay? I'm a sucker for things that are getting ahead of themselves to the downside. And I called this, I don't know, somewhere in here on a 2-minute candle setup, and it triggered and failed pretty quickly. And then, by the way, it closes at 2074, and in after hours, it's about 22, so that's just typical. You can't catch a break. But anyway, this thing was super choppy. but I'm a sucker for bottom feeders. I don't play them with size, but anyway, I was basically flat, like down $20 on the day before I started messing with this one, and I ended up down $1,050. Not proud of that, but still, I've been making more than that each day for almost the last couple weeks every day, and I haven't had a red day since September. So somebody in the chat room said, you know what, these you got to have red days. It keeps you humble, and I thought that was a great post, and that's true because I was starting to think I was invincible, couldn't have a red day, and it's really important to get slapped every now and then. Hopefully not too big, as long as you're defensive, right? It's really important so you don't so you don't start trading too big and then really set yourself up for a nasty day. So I'll bounce back tomorrow. But that is the list, and again, hopefully we'll find some gappers too. All right, I'll quit babbling, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good night.